Otto Friedrich, like a lot of interesting and intelligent men, was enormously complicated. And I think that part of his the complicatedness of who he was that he was constantly challenged by the fact that he had to earn a living to support 5 noisy children and didn't want to be in journalism really. He wanted to write his books. And there was only one period in his entire tenure as a book writer and as a journalist when he had 1 year off to sit at home and write Before the Deluge, a portrait of Weimar Germany in the 20s. And so he had 5 children, and the first 4 were a year apart in quick succession, followed by a 5th child 8 years later. And I think that when he came home from the Long Island Railroad, Penn Station, every day, he was exhausted, and he would come home and play the piano, get a beer, and come home to a wonderful meal, and then write late into the night and on weekends. He was also, I think that because I'm a second child and he is a second child, I always felt very, very supported and defended by him. We were very, very close. I adored him, and I think I never felt unloved by him, which isn't something that every child in my family can say. At his memorial service, several people from Time magazine came up to me and said that they were not aware that I had 4 siblings. They thought I only had 3 siblings, which is kind of a shocking thing to say about somebody's father. It means that he never talked about my retarded brother Nicky, and he never talked about my retarded and deaf sister Amelia, even though they were all the time profoundly a part of the rest of our lives. So he didn't do well with any kind of mental infirmity. He wasn't a good father to my brother and sister. He never went bowling with them. He never played catch with Nicky. He never did any of the things that most fathers in America in the 50s and 60s were doing. He didn't, he couldn't, he wouldn't. He was in many ways a very European father with very European sensibilities. And what does that mean? That means that children were to be seen and not heard until something they had to say was interesting. We, as the first 4 children, never were allowed to sit at the table with my mother and father until we were able to sit quietly and listen and occasionally contribute something remotely intelligent, which means that I did not actually join the kitchen table for supper until about the age of 11. And my brother and sister, Nicky and Amelia, never made it to the grown-up table, the adult table. When I was about 40, my father once called me urgently. He never said, "Hi Molly, how are you?" He just would call and ask me a question that was on his mind that couldn't keep. And his question was, "Do you remember a book called The Duchess Bakes a Cake?" And I, of course, had dropped everything to talk to him because he called me rarely. And I said, "No." And he said, "You don't remember it." And then he started to recite it. And I said, I'm sorry, Papa, I don't know this book. What is this about?" And it turned out that he had, from the ages of 1 to 4, for those 3 years of my life, my young, tender life, he had read that book every single night to me. And the fact that I had no recollection of it whatsoever devastated him. And so who knows what goes into the brains of young children and what they take away. It was, he was crushed.